A 16-year-old dies trying to get care at Ontario Hospital. This is in Canada. And so if anyone hears from Canada, anyone's a nurse from Canada and you're listening, please comment and let me know what you think about this. And if you're seeing this as the norm, because I'm in the United States, of course, and we know that the healthcare system is slowly degrading, and it's just so sad. It's just so sad. And you can see we're called the broken ship, and this is where nursing shouldn't break you. But it seems like the healthcare system is broken and it's breaking everyone along with it. So I'm going to go ahead and I have an article pulled up here that um, I want to share with you, and we're going to go through the article together. Okay, so give me a moment. All right, so let's go. This is the article right here. Finlay Van Verken's life is now a collection of memories, closely guarded by his parents. The 16-year-old is remembered as a loving son, a devoted older brother, and a loyal friend. I still hear his laughter, his father, G.J., said. Finley was a typical oldest son, very responsible, looking after his twin brothers, making friends wherever he went. All right, let's go into the story. In early February 2024, a migraine kept Finley home from school. His mother, Hazel, said that this would sometimes happen if Finley was getting sick, but his condition got worse, and Hazel decided to take him to Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital. He was crying out in pain a lot and just kind of looking at me like, get me there somewhere, Hazel said. You could tell he didn't know what was going on, but he knew it was not normal, so I drove as fast as I could. When I got to the hospital, I just abandoned the car, the doors of ER, abandoned the car at the doors of the ER, and we ran in. There was just so many people. The corridors were lined with people. We sat down, and Finley just kept crying out. This is his family here. This is him with his two brothers, his dad and his mom. He never cries out in pain. He would never do that if it wasn't a real emergency. Hazel says he would not see a doctor for hours, despite telling the nurses Finley was not doing well. When I went up at 3 in the morning, they said, well, we only have one doctor, but there's another one coming at 4. I don't know where that one doctor was, Hazel recalled. In reviewing the hospital records, Martin and Hillier lawyer Megan Walker said Finley was triaged at almost exactly 10 o'clock. He wasn't actually seen by a physician until 6:22 the next morning. According to the statement, so it took them that long. He was triaged at 10 and seen at 6:22 in the morning by a doctor. According to the statement of claim about what happened, when he was seen the following morning, the doctor said Finlay was experiencing sepsis, pneumonia, and hypoxia, and was at high risk for acute deterioration. His oxygen levels, which the lawyers said hospital records show had been dropping through the night, were also a concern. I remember just saying to Finley, like, Finley, we've got to get, we're looking at this screen. His oxygen his saturations were dropping. I can't even speak because I can't even imagine. And his mom is like, yeah, we have to get it up. His breathing was shallow by this point. He said, I can't do deep. It hurts too much. And I said, you've got to try. Finley eventually needed to be intubated. The decision was made to transfer him to Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. But before that could happen, he went into cardiac arrest. The statement of claim said the contributing cause of the arrest was listed as septic shock pneumonia. Finlay arrived at Sick Kids and was taken to the ICU. He was in hypotensive shock and placed on ECMO, a life support system that helps take over a patient's heart and lung function. This kid was dying. His organs were failing. But staff told Hazel and GJ that Finley's organ function was getting worse, and to continue on the machine, the ECMO machine, was considered futile. We had to make a decision to take Finley off life support, Hazel said through tears. GJ added, or risk the situation would escalate even more and he would wake up and die in a lot of pain. After Finley died, they met with hospital staff. The parents, Hazel and GJ, met with hospital staff to review what happened. They didn't say they were wrong, Hazel said, but they acknowledged that if Finlay had been seen earlier, it could have been a different outcome. Global News reached out for comment on the story. In a written statement, Halton healthcare officials, maybe that's the healthcare system, said, "We are deeply committed to delivering high-quality, compassionate care to the communities we serve all across 3 of our hospitals: Milton District Hospital, Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital, and Georgetown Hospital, as well as our community sites. Like many hospitals, we are seeing more patients presenting with incredibly complex conditions and morbidities, often requiring longer stays and more intensive care." No, there was like one doctor in the ER and it was full. I don't know how many patients were in there, but I bet you this ER was full. So this is so tragic. I want to know, what is the point of triage? If you have a patient that comes in with sepsis, as nurses, we're trained to recognize when someone is in distress. Somebody who's hypoxic is in distress, right? We don't know why they're in pain. He's 16. I would be thinking like meningitis, something like that. So something like that, you would want to get him checked, but obviously there's not enough staff to cover the care. And I'm going to read, because I actually saw this in a subreddit and had to go find the article on this because I was so disturbed, because I was thinking, boy, if this is my child, like I am sick. Like I'm sick right now, because even as a nurse, like what could I do? There's no one to assist in the emergency room. I'm going to read you some comments from some nurses, and I want you to drop me some comments and let me know what you think about this, because the healthcare system just continues to fail everywhere. I would imagine, I think Toronto has a different type of healthcare system than the United States does. What in the world? What is going on? A BSN says, "Yikes, being on the other side of negative articles, not personally, but in my work environment, I usually give the hospitals the benefit of the doubt. But in this case, it's just bad. Sounds like this kid was CTAs too, and it took almost 12 hours to see a doc. That's pretty hard to defend." Yeah, 12 hours. Why should it take 12 hours to see a doctor in the emergency room? Like, why are we in the emergency room? The cost is like ridiculous when you go to the emergency room. Another ER nurse says, "Unfortunately, this is not uncommon in my ER, as we're frequently short on doctors. I've seen CTA2s that I would put in a room at the start of my shift, and they were only being just assessed at the end of my shift." And you know, ER nurses work 12-hour shifts. So I guess it's not uncommon in some hospitals to not be assessed for 12 hours. I posted another video prior to this. It's been a couple weeks, because I just feel like some of these are so draining. And it's like, what do you do when they keep putting cuts on healthcare? The strain on the healthcare system is so hard. It's so terrible. What do you do about this? What is there to do? I'm going to keep putting this out. I'm going to keep putting these out here. And hopefully, maybe one day we'll be able to do something about it. I just don't know. It's just sad because people are dying. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. That if you have an issue, if somebody's really sick, I know we think we can just go to the emergency, call an ambulance. I don't know about in Canada. If you're Canadian, drop me a comment and let me know. And even here in the US, if you work in the ER, let me know, because I've never worked ER, but I believe that the protocol is that if the ambulances get priority. So the people that come in on ambulances get priority over those who drive themselves into the ER. That's why you see all those people waiting in the ER, and ambulances are pulling in back to back to back. And those people are getting triaged and they're getting a bed back in the emergency room, while the people that came in through the ER for emergency room care are not getting care. Now, I know that many of these hospitals also see people that come in and use the ER for primary care because they don't have primary care doctors, but still, we are nurses, we're medical professionals, and I'm not blaming the medical professionals because they are understaffed, but when you triage someone, we are trained to understand signs and symptoms that require immediate care. This is crazy. One ER doc for a whole a hospital room that you got 100 patients waiting. When will those patients get triaged? When will they get seen? Actually, right now the small community hospitals are having funding cuts with all the cuts into the healthcare system. Yeah. Some of these smaller community hospitals are going to suffer, so you're going to see more of this. Someone else says the kid sat septic and hypoxic for 12 hours. This is absolutely unimaginable. Why even have a triage system? That's what I just said. Do ambulances sit when they arrive too? This poor kid and family thought they were going to get help and watched him slowly and painfully die in front of their eyes with all the help around them. I hope they win. Yeah, and she asked the question that I just posed, right? Do they sit when they arrive too? I think ambulances get priority. If you feel like you're really, really super sick, I know it may seem silly, right? Because you want to go with your kid, follow the ambulance, get in your car, call the ambulance, be like, I'm scared to put him in the car. I don't know what's going on. It seems really bad. The other thing is that sometimes we drive our family members to the hospital because we don't realize how bad it is. I'm a registered nurse, and I will tell you, my husband had a heart attack back in, I forgot what year it was. It's been over 10 years now. And I drove him to the hospital. I knew he was having chest pain. Sometimes people will refuse. There's some type of stigma. Maybe it's because of the cost, but listen, it's your life. If you feel like you're in dire straits, then call an ambulance. I say if you're in an ER and you're not getting the attention, then I would go out to your car somewhere, take your kid, go out, sit somewhere in a corner, go drive a block down the road and call an ambulance to take you to the nearest hospital or to another hospital, because this is insane. Someone says, as to your question about ambulances, yes, they do. At my hospital, the ambulance bay is near the front entrance, and I know ER is having a busy day when I see 3 ambulances lined up outside. Someone says they don't sit for 12 hours without patient care. The kid had worsening vitals, hypoxia for 12 hours, and basically, from sounds of it, had almost no care until he coded, which is key until he had a cardiac arrest. U.S. hospitals would have called a code sepsis on arrival for what it sounds like walked in or developed mid-shift. I don't know. Would the U.S., most hospital, I would imagine they would have, but the way the healthcare system is going, I don't know. You guys tell me, ER nurses out there, tell me what it's like in your emergency rooms here in the United States. Okay, a burned out family nurse practitioner. That's her title. That's what she labeled this. Burned out family nurse practitioner. This is the new normal. As the healthcare system collapses, it will continue to collapse on the ER. Mom said the ER waiting room was packed. Figuring out who is about to die is easier said than done. Soon, I will be leaving ER because I just can't handle this bullshit anymore. Once I leave, our ER will be down to 1 provider overnights too. Heaven help them. So now there's a nurse practitioner and another practitioner working in the ER on nights, and they're super packed. And like she said, figuring out who's dying and who's not sometimes is very difficult. That's why I didn't want to call judgment. I haven't worked in the ER, but you have someone literally sitting, waiting to be seen. When he came in, he wasn't in that condition, but we all know that sepsis is something that can progress rather rapidly if untreated. Literally, they could have given this kid an IV and some antibiotics while they did some tests to figure out why he was septic. Ran some labs. But hey, I don't know. This is crazy. Another ER says that's how ours is overnight. One doc and one APP. Half the time it's fine, and then sometimes it's awful and dangerous feeling if shit starts hitting the fan. Yeah, like it's all great like when nothing's going on, right? You're having a quiet night. You go like, yeah, we can handle. So is that how the hospitals are staffing now? They're looking at, oh, you had like a couple quiet nights, so like 2 people in the ER is good until you have a night where you have like 10, 15 ERs. But if you have 8 beds, I don't know. This is so sad. Another nurse says, one doctor? Good Lord. I took my son to our local ED a few nights ago, and there were 2 doctors just for the pediatric section with 8 beds. That must be incredibly stressful. No shit. One doctor for the whole emergency room, and you got pediatrics, you got geriatrics, you got like your regular adult patients walking in. If you have an accident, whew, you have an MVA, like a motor vehicle accident or something like that, then it's crazy. If you have a motor vehicle accident and you have someone sitting that comes in that you have to stabilize, right? Because that person's actively bleeding out. So you're going to prioritize that patient. But the kid that's sitting there, that's in pain, dying of sepsis, see, that's the thing. Like, you can't see it. But the other patient who's had a motor vehicle accident and may be bleeding out and need to be stabilized may require the care of those 2 practitioners in the ER who's tending to everybody else. I mean, it is an emergency room. You could have more than one critical patient in the ER. I don't get it. I don't know how you guys do it. Someone says, our hospitalist is a nurse practitioner, MD team, and they cover usually 100 patients. So an MD and a nurse practitioner cover 100 patients. Does that make sense to you? Oh, she says, I can't agree with you more that it's just going to get worse as we see the healthcare system collapse. With all the changes going on in America right now, it is a very scary time to be working in healthcare. And then she did an edit and said, I know this is about Canadian healthcare system, but I'm just commiserating. Yeah, because we can. Because we understand. I don't know what's going on in Canada. Obviously, it's not that great there either. Do tell. Do tell me, Canada. An RN here says, Ontario has a premier, I don't know what a premier is, whose solution to the healthcare crisis is divesting more funding from the public to a new private system. It's likely that this hospital, one of the newest, most expensive and fanciest in the area, was dangerously understaffed and dealing with people using the ER as a primary care situation. All the premiers are about to choose austerity measures to balance the budget, and cutting funding to the public healthcare system will result in more shit like this. That poor family. These must be Canadians talking. And someone else says, agreed. Let's not forget Ford's Conservative legislated that Ontario nurses couldn't legally negotiate a raise more than 1% per year during a pandemic and cost of living crisis. Not hard to see why there are staffing shortages in the environment. Oh, wow. So during the pandemic, they cut the wages. They said the nurses couldn't negotiate more than 1% per year increase. Oh, I don't know. Let me know what you think out there. If you're a nurse, like, we're nurses, even if you're a doctor, like, you use the healthcare system. At some point, we all will use the healthcare system. It's pretty scary. Somebody said, reading this honestly gave me so much anxiety. That poor family. And it doesn't help that healthcare professionals are essentially set up for failure due to understaffing and lack of resources. This is scary. I just want to hug that family and take away their pain. This also made me second guess working in an Ontario ER. Ugh. And someone says, and in America, you get a bill afterwards. Ain't that some shit? Someone else says, blame the system, sue the hospital, leave the staff out of it. TAS too, and not being seen for 8 hours is horrible, but also a common reality in many places. My ED wait time are 6 to 12 hours on any given day. On nights, we have 2 doctors on, and they get whisked away for any emergency, which essentially stops all flow. The 15-minute requirement is absolute BS because the organization puts that in place when it's an impossible criteria to meet. Staff can't have a full workload and keep track of every single person that is waiting to assess changes every 15 minutes. This is on the system. So there's not enough staff. I guess you're supposed to assess the changes, your patient status every 15 minutes in the emergency room, and it's impossible. I mean, how are you doing that when the doctor is being called away in the middle of, you have an emergency room? I don't know what other emergency, maybe there are other hospital emergencies that he has to tend to, or maybe like a CVA if you get somebody, like an ambulance that comes in with a critical patient. This is on the system. No family should have to go through that. Saying you don't know where the doctor was is also stupid because I'm sure the score was running around seeing everyone else that was waiting. A pediatric RN says, I started my first ER nurse job in 1999. I remember the attendings were complaining that their expected productivity was increased from seeing 2 patients an hour to seeing 2.1 patients an hour. Yeah, I wonder what the expectation is now. That was in 1999. An ER nurse says, I worked with a doctor that I swear would see a patient an hour. He said he did it because they changed from a per patient system to a per hour. The change happened in 1999. His wait times were so bad. He was a family doctor, not ER trained. Thinking about working with him gives me anxiety. Oh, wow. So listen to that. They used to get paid per patient, and then they started paying the doctors per hour. So the doctor decided in the ER that he would only see 1 patient per hour. I don't even know what to say to that. You nurses out there, I can see why the docs are doing it, but it's so dangerous. Like, I can't even speak. You nurses out there, if you worked with a doc that has done that, drop me a comment. This is wild. It's wild. It's just wild. Like, it's the Wild Wild West in the healthcare system. It's like, go to the hospital at your own risk. Go to the ER at your own risk. Are you kidding me? I don't know. Thanks for posting this. I read it yesterday, and since then it's been bothering me a lot because I have a similar age child. I guess absolutely unfathomable to me. Like, how is it even possible? And the lady that posted this said she used to work at this hospital. She said she didn't work at the hospital in the ED. She worked in postpartum for 4 months. Huh. Someone else says, I worked in Toronto ER before and it was low tier, but we still made sure things got done, although cutting corners. I agree with you with everything you said. Crazy. Someone says I'm in rural Northwest Ontario, so a wait time like this typically wouldn't happen. You'd get a max of 6 hours, and only if we had someone crashing. But even then, if he was that sick, we'd whisk him back and start a workup. But the RN's not starting labs from triage down there. I know they typically will up here. That's what I was wondering. What do you guys think about that? Like, why not labs? That's the first thing I thought about. Like, you would do labs, start an IV, even if you let them sit, and then, you know, do lab work to check for sepsis, to check for bacteria, run an IV, because, you know, with septic shock, you have you have hypoxia, so he probably needed oxygen. This kid needed so much. He needed an IV antibiotic. They could have done blood cultures. Blood cultures, labs. They could have done stat blood cultures, and they would have had those results back in a couple of hours, if not sooner. I don't know. You know, I'm sitting here at my desk making these assumptions, with the understanding of how bad the staffing is and how overworked these nurses are and how hard it is when you're running between patients to catch everything going on. Maybe that's the other part too, that so many patients are coming in that are non-critical, that, you know, we're using the ER for like regular primary care. And so the nurses are so used to seeing that, so the staff is desensitized. But this still makes absolutely no freaking sense to me. I don't know. I can't make it make sense. So anyhow, I wanted to bring this to you. Thank you for joining me today on the Broken Shift, because nursing shouldn't break you and shouldn't unalive your patients either. And this was just really sad. So I just want to see what my nurses out there are thinking, what your thoughts are on this. And, you know, I don't know. There's not much to say, just sad. Just prayers to this family. And I hope they win. But is it really a win? It's almost like a lose-lose situation. They'll get a settlement. They'll get some money. They don't get their kid back. When they settle with the family, does this make the healthcare system better? Or they just keep it moving and keep rinse and repeat? So freaking sad. Yep, I'll drop a link for this article in the description box below for you. I'll pin it in the comments because it's so sad. No reason for this. This is not how the healthcare system is supposed to work. I've been a nurse for almost 30 years. 30 years? Oh, it'll be 30 years in a couple years. 28 years I've been a nurse, and I don't think this is what any nurse signs up for. Drop me a comment, smash that like button, and hit the subscribe button so you could be notified, and just support my endeavor to document the Broken Shift. All right. See you in the next one.